Mount Everest is the tallest point in the whole world, at 8,848 meters tall, just below the cruising height of a jumbo jet. Previously known as Peak 15, Mount Everest was first accurately surveyed in 1852 in Dehradun, India, by the British Trigonometric Survey Team at 6 different survey sites, all over 100 miles away from the summit in India. Amazingly, at the time of the survey, the height was surveyed at 29,002 feet in 1852. This was only 26 feet off the real height, given today at 29,028 feet, or 8,848 meters. Sir George Everest, after whom the mountain is named, never even saw Mount Everest, let alone ascend it. However, the renowned geographer's name was proposed as the mountain's name by the Surveyor General of India, Andrew Scott Wall, who was the first European to see the mountain. Scott Wall wrote his recommendation to the Royal Geographical Society in 1865, and it was accepted. The local Nepali name is Sagamartha, which means goddess of the sky, and the Tibetan name is Jomalangma, which means goddess, mother of the world. From the time it was surveyed in 1852 to the time it was first summited, it took 101 years to climb to the top. 24 men died and 15 expeditions failed in the process before the first successful summit attempt. On noon, May 29, 1953, Edmund Hillary, a beekeeper from New Zealand, and Tenzin Norgay, a Sherpa born in Tibet, were the first men to stand on top of Mount Everest. Today, we'll be making the drive from Lhasa at 3,650 meters, or about 12,000 feet above sea level, all the way to Everest Base Camp at 5,150 meters, about 17,000 feet. In this video, we will not be climbing to the top, but I want to show you what it looks like to visit Everest Base Camp on the Tibet side and view the highest mountain in the world from the base camp. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. The sun is coming over Mount Everest. You can see the sign behind me, the third pole of the earth. Mount Everest and the Himalayas ultimately are called the third pole because it's the third largest source of fresh water after the North and South Pole. And these glaciers here in the Himalayas provide fresh drinking water to 50% of the world's population. They flow down into China, India, and Southeast Asia. And ultimately, whatever happens in the future in the world will depend on what happens in the snow and glaciers in these mountain ranges. Today we're driving 360 kilometers from Lhatse to Everest Base Camp. You can see it is just kind of like a barren high-altitude desert out here. The road is paved, but it's still pretty bumpy. It was actually paved in 2015. Before that, the whole road to Everest Base Camp was many, many hours longer because it was a dirt road. But these days it is actually paved. It's not a great quality paving. It's still a little bit bumpy, but at least we are able to go 60 kilometers an hour, 80 kilometers an hour sometimes. So yeah, this is our journey, 8-hour drive to Everest Base Camp, and Tonight we're going to be sleeping on Everest at 5,150 meters. We're here at Lhatse La Pass, 5,100 meters. This is one of the tallest 3 passes as you're driving to Everest Base Camp, but not the tallest. In a couple hours, we're going to hit Gyawu La Pass, which is 5,200 meters, and that is actually taller than Everest Base Camp itself. So we're really high, super windy. Even just walking out of the car, it's like, oh, you're cold and just out of breath immediately. And this is definitely not a place where you want to hang out too long in nature. Head back to the car after just 5 minutes being outside. What's crazy is we're at 5,200 meters, so high, higher than Everest Base Camp itself, and these wild Tibetan guys just drive their motorcycles up this pass and hang out up here like it's a picnic in the forests of Britain. So this is just nuts, man. These guys just hanging up here. This is like their little daytime picnic spot. Ultimately, they're selling souvenirs to tourists, but they live in one of the most rugged, challenging, and remote areas of the world. And here they are selling a few souvenirs to tourists, and that's how they make their money. We're at the entrance gate to Everest Base Camp. So from here we are going up to Gyawu La at 5,200 meters. This is where they take the ticket. We're looking at 5 of the tallest mountains in the world right here at over 8,000 meters. This is the parking lot where all the private vehicles and private vans that you are riding in to Everest Base Camp must park, and then you have to switch over to the ecological park bus. Okay, this is the ecological park bus area. So you're gonna have to drive your private car here, park here, and then get on one of these green buses. The idea is that by putting more people on a bus, you're reducing the carbon footprint by taking larger transportation and more public transportation. It's a good idea, but in effect, the way it actually works out is that you just transfer from your private car onto one of these green buses with the same amount of people, and it's not really reducing any amount of traffic or emissions, really. I think it's just probably a good way for the government to promote their national park. So this is where you get on here, and then it's a 30-minute drive to the tent hotel where we're going to be sleeping tonight. Okay, this is Everest Base Camp behind me. You can see it's a little tent city of these tent hotels, and they're all kind of coated in this fiber of yak hair. So on the outside is yak hair, but on the inside it's a relatively modern tent with electricity inside. You'll have kind of a small communal eating room, and then maybe 4 or 5 little dorm bunk rooms. So don't expect anything super fancy. There's no running water here, but yeah, it is a nice warm place to sleep. Everest Base Camp has certainly developed a lot over the last few years. This used to be just kind of a dirt floor. Now you can see they've paved everything with these concrete pavers. So underneath all these tents are concrete. So you can see the green park bus behind me. The drive from the park bus station is about an hour, where you have to park your private van or your car, and then you drive up here for an hour, and then this is where you're going to sleep at Everest Base Camp in one of these 50 yak hair tents. Each tent holds about 10 people, so there's a kind of a private room with 2 single small beds, and the mattress is relatively comfortable. I mean, it's not like super plush, but it's enough. And yeah, there's 2 little twin beds in each room. There's only a curtain on each room, so it's not like you have a super private door, but it's enough. And then usually you'll eat breakfast and dinner, which is provided by the tent hotel. Do be aware that because you're super remote in areas, that even just paying for water or Coke can be pretty expensive. And food here is really simple. It's just fried rice, a couple noodles. We actually got to have hot pot last night, which is really cool. So yeah, those are kind of your options. Don't expect really anything too fancy, but they do have sweet tea and hot drinks and ginger lemon tea, which is nice to warm yourself up after being in negative 20 degrees Celsius at Everest Base Camp. Okay, this is Everest Base Camp. We're in a tent hotel. So it's basically a yak hair tent, traditional yak hair tent, but instead of just being all one room inside, they've made 4 or 5 little dorm rooms like this. No running water, there's electricity, and a little bit of hot food. So you can see I'm walking through the tent city here. It's a little bit of a labyrinth. All the tents look exactly the same, and but they have their own individual owners. And so make sure you remember your tent number, which is listed on the tent, because otherwise it's easy to get quite lost. Every tent has a little number, like this little 12 here. So make sure you remember your tent number, otherwise you could be walking around here for a long time in the freezing cold. So we're inside the tent city here. Just gonna do a quick little pano. You can see the floor here is cement. That used to be all kind of just dirt and river with poop and pee flowing through everywhere. So they've really standardized it quite a bit the last few years, and it's quite actually nice in the middle of the night. They do have some Tibetan dancing and karaoke here. So this is the toilet here. You can see it's a very simple squatty situation. There's about 2 of these for the whole camp. So yeah, there's probably about 5 little squatty potties for maybe 50 tents, and each tent holds about 10 people or so. So yeah, that's the toilet situation. It's not super fancy, but it's definitely better than it used to be, where a lot of the poop and pee kind of used to be all over the base camp, and now they've at least centralized it in these little mobile home things. This is a Nimapa monastery, which means it's a red hat monastery. Nimapa actually means old order, or the old sect. So it's the oldest sect of Tibetan Buddhism, founded by Guru Rinpoche, an Indian master who came from India and basically spread the teachings of Buddha. So it's a very old monastery. Okay, you got Everest right there behind that stupa. And this is the highest monastery in the world, called Rongbuk Monastery, right at Everest Base Camp, also next to the highest post office in the world. Essentially, this is really the only civilization here. There's a few monks that live back in the houses, and maybe 20 monks that practice in this monastery at 5,200 meters. That is some serious devotion to live at such an incredible height and be willing to live there all year round, even during the winter. And that is Everest Base Camp. Subscribe to our channel. Check us out at elevatedtrips.com for more in adventure and travel on the Tibetan Plateau.